everybody! Today's video is all about being pregnant in Germany. For those of you who don't know, I am 35 weeks pregnant with baby number 2. I am an American expat living here in Germany with my German husband, and we have our 2-year-old son who is also German and American, and now we are expecting baby number 2, who is our first little girl, and she'll also be German American. So the purpose of this video is just to share my experience of being an American having a baby here in Germany. I thought about putting pregnancy and birth and all of that into one video, but then I realized it's so much information and it's so much to talk about that I figured it would be best just to split the videos up. So this video is just about being pregnant in Germany, what it's like, things that I like and don't like about being pregnant here versus in America. Let me start out by saying I've never had a baby in the States. I've never been pregnant in America. The only pregnancy experience that I have is here in Germany, and this is just my experience of what being pregnant in Germany was like. Just like back home in the States, when you have that feeling that you might be pregnant, you can go to your local grocery store or pharmacy and you can pick up what is called a Schwangerschaftstest. That's just the German word for pregnancy test. You take it. If it's positive, woohoo! You call your OBGYN. Here in Germany, they call it a Frauenarzt. If it's a woman, they call it a Frauenärztin. As soon as you get your positive pregnancy test, you can make the phone call to the doctor. I was able to get in right away at 4 weeks, pretty much 4 weeks for both of my pregnancies, and I had an appointment with my doctor at 4 weeks. What was great was that because we have public insurance here in Germany, we were able to go to any doctor that we wanted to. So it was my choice. If I didn't like a doctor, I could just find another one. There were no complications, no hang-ups with insurance. Every doctor is fair game. So it was really great because I was able to find a doctor that really fit with my personality. I was able to go in at 4 weeks, like I said, for both of my pregnancies, and at both pregnancies, I just met with the doctor. I didn't do any blood work or anything yet. I just met with the doctor, and then we went in and she did an ultrasound that verified that yes, indeed, I was pregnant. You couldn't see a baby or anything like that quite yet, but we were able to see how the uterine tissue was thickening and all these different things that are usually an indication of a positive pregnancy. And for both of my pregnancies, I went back at 6 weeks, and that was when my doctor did yet another ultrasound to find a heartbeat, to see if the pregnancy had progressed as intended. One thing that sticks out in my mind that is a clear difference between Germany and the United States is that Germans are very comfortable with nudity, definitely more comfortable with nudity than Americans. So I know a lot of times with doctors' offices in the States, when you have your ultrasound and stuff, you have to undress and certain things, and you're given some sort of sheet to cover yourself, just, for modesty. In Germany, you don't get that little thing. If you're lucky, you get like this teeny tiny little paper towel kind of thing, but it really doesn't cover very much. And again, I think that's just a cultural norm here. People are not weirded out by nudity. They don't really care or think twice about it. It's your doctor. Of course your doctor is going to see you, so what's it matter? So people, I think, are just more open to that sort of thing than they are in the States. And for me, that was a bit of a difference. That was definitely a cultural difference. I don't think that I've never felt uncomfortable in a doctor's situation. I've never felt uncomfortable with my doctor in that setting, but it was definitely something that I had to get used to because it was definitely a difference. Early in the pregnancy, it's also standard for mothers to get what is called a Mutterpass, which literally translates to mother pass, and it's amazing. It has all of my blood work, all of my test results, everything from my weight from the very beginning of my pregnancy to the very end. It gives information on my baby's birth and what the birth was like for the baby and for mother. It's just filled with everything, and you take your Mutterpass everywhere with you. So you bring it to all of your checkups. Any doctor visit you go to where it may be important for them to know that you're pregnant or to have any sort of knowledge of your pregnancy, you bring that with. And I actually just keep mine in my purse because whenever I'm out and about, if something goes wrong and I need to go to the hospital for any reason, for whatever reason, there will be somebody who will be able to get my Mutterpass and know exactly what what week I am in my pregnancy, if I have any health concerns, what my blood type is. I may not even be conscious, but they would have all the information for both mother and child if needed. And I love this Mutterpass. I love it. What's also really cool is when I was pregnant with my son, I remember my mother-in-law found her Mutterpass from her pregnancies. And it was so cool to go back because the book is the exact same. It hasn't changed in like 30-something years. But it was so cool to look back and see all the information from my mother-in-law's pregnancy and be able to compare it with mine. Just like in the States, you go to a checkup, you go to your doctor's checkup basically once a month. And at this checkup, it's just standard stuff. You get your weight checked, you get your blood pressure checked, you have a urine analysis done. If there is any blood work that needs to be done, that gets taken care of during your doctor's visit. And also at these visits, you are able to talk to your doctor, and you're also usually given an ultrasound. So in a normal German pregnancy, you can have anywhere from 3 to 7 or 8 ultrasounds, and that's just for a normal pregnancy. If you have some sort of complication, like I had some complications with my first, I had tons of ultrasound pictures. This time around, I've had pretty much an ultrasound picture done every single month. So it's kind of cool because you can make a book just out of your ultrasound pictures because you have so many of them. We don't have any co-pays when we go to the doctor. Everything is included. Towards the end of your pregnancy, we have something that they call SCTG here in Germany, or CTG. In English, it actually stands for electronic fetal monitoring, and I think in the States they also call it a non-stress test. So we complete a non-stress test pretty much every doctor's appointment, somewhere towards the later 20s in your pregnancy. So I think I started my CTG testing, when was it? I think at week 28 this time around. So I've had a couple of CTGs now. So in terms of actual medical care, I found that the medical care is quite good here. It's very, very, very good. I like that I have been able to get into my doctor very easily. I have not had any long waits or anything. When I have had complications with my son's pregnancy, it was very easy to get into the doctor right away. I didn't have to wait for anything. It was it's been really great. I think the actual care itself has been really good. I would say that probably the only thing that I could see as a possible drawback would be that if you have any sort of emergencies that don't take place within office hours, your only option is to go to the ER. There's no ability to call some sort of on-call nurse. There's no one that answers emergency phone calls for doctors and patients. Basically, at the end of the day, when the doctor's office is closed, it's closed. And if you have any issues, you take your Mutterpass and you go to the ER. And it's not that bad because they have all the information. So they know what to look for. So the only time that you can get in touch with your doctor is during office hours. And what was good was that, like I said, you have the Mutterpass, and also insurance covered all of the emergency visits. We never ever had to pay anything for our ER visits, and we were there quite a bit. I'll talk more about this part after in the next segment, but after you have a baby here in Germany, it's customary for a midwife to come and check on you after the baby is born. What's great is that my doctor had a partnership with a midwife company, and so the midwives would actually come to the doctor's office and they would do all of the weight checks and all the standard measurements. They would run the CTG machine for you. They would complete the urinalysis. They would do all the tests. And as part of that deal with them, they would also find you a midwife, which was really helpful for me as an expat, because I was like, what? I've got to find a midwife? What? I was totally lost. But I was so thankful that they organized all of that for me. They found one for me. All I had to do was just make a phone call to one midwife and say, hey, I'm the person that you're supposed to be helping. It's normal to meet with this midwife at some point during your pregnancy. And again, you give her your Mutterpass. She looks through all of your test results and all of your information, and she talks to you a little bit about what your pregnancy was like. So it's really good because you also have contact with another medical professional that can give you tips on things. In this pregnancy with baby girl, my daughter was breech for quite a few weeks, and my midwife was so wonderful and so helpful because she gave me all these different homeopathic tips and all these different positions to sit in or kneel in or or whatever. She just gave me a whole bunch of tips that I didn't have to find. I didn't have to do any research online. I didn't have to do any searching. She's just another opinion on things. In Germany, insurance covers a wide range of pre-baby things that you can take part in. I'm talking like pregnancy, maternity yoga, swimming, acupuncture, baby handling and care classes, birth prep classes, both just for mother and also for mother and partner. There are breastfeeding classes that you can take advantage of. It's just a really great opportunity, again, to meet other moms, but also to get as well informed as possible. Here in Germany, we have something called Mutterschutz, which literally translates into mother protection. And what this means a couple of different things. The first part being is that as soon as a woman tells her employer that she's pregnant, her employer is not allowed to fire her. The woman cannot be fired. Another part of this is the 6 weeks before a woman's due date and the 8 weeks following the birth of the baby, the woman is allowed to stay home completely with full benefits, full pay, all of the benefits of working a full-time job. She's allowed to keep all of that for that time period. So a lot of women really like being able to stay home the last 6 weeks of their pregnancy. And again, it's just to protect the mother. I remember with my son, I was teaching, and I remember specifically talking to my employer at the time, and my employer said, nope, you need to stay home. It's, you know, you can't take on any classes after this point because you're officially 6 weeks before your baby's due. This next thing is going to kind of tie into more what I talk about in my next video, but after those 2 months are up postpartum, the woman is allowed to apply for Elterngeld, which literally just translates into parent money. And that is money that the woman gets for being able to stay at home with her baby. And it goes for basically a year. Many women choose to stay home longer than 1 year. In fact, it's very normal for women to stay home the first 3 years of their children's lives. And because of this, also included in the Mutterschutz, is jobs are legally supposed to hold and protect the woman's job for her for the first 3 years of her child's life. So for 3 years, the woman has the choice to decide when she wants to go back to work, for how long she wants to stay home, and legally her company is supposed to hold her position for her for when she's ready to return. All of these laws and all of these things are in place with the sole purpose of being able to protect the mother, yet again, just it's all about protecting the mother, but also to eliminate any pressure from your employer to return back to work. So you're not going to have any issues. Your employer is not going to legally be allowed to say, well, you better come back or you're going to lose your job after a few months, or you're not going to have the threat of being fired. None of that. So legally, being a mother is very, very, very well protected here in Germany. So in many ways, it sounds like giving birth here in Germany is wonderful, and it is. There are many, many, many benefits of giving birth here and being pregnant here. But some things that I've noticed as cultural differences, for me as an American, were a little hard to get used to. One of them being the general culture surrounding pregnancy here is very different than what I'm used to in the States. In the States, as an American, I am used to the celebration of having a baby. I remember when I was pregnant with my son, I had all these expectations of like baby showers and gifts and parties and just the excitement of everybody about having a baby. And people are excited. They were excited and they are excited for this baby too, but it's very, very, very different. In Germany, there are no baby showers. Slowly, I've noticed that a few people are having more of them. But again, it's really, really, really uncommon to have any sort of baby shower. And part of that is that it's very taboo. You don't talk about a baby really before you have the baby in your arms. It's like, I think the German mentality is that it's kind of like counting your eggs before they hatch, that sort of thing. And that was definitely very hard for me. So I've never had a baby shower in my life, ever. Unless they're your close family, they don't even ask about your baby. They just don't talk about it. Even in the grocery store, they may ask, you know, how far along are you, but that's it. I mean, there's no real conversation about it. People don't ask about baby names. A lot of times people don't even ask about the gender of your baby because, again, none of this is even shared by the parents usually until after the baby is born. I remember when my husband and I, when we shared that we were having a boy and we shared his name, people even within our family were like, "You're already sharing this information?" Yeah, because for me it wasn't an issue. There's no mention of names or anything. It's just really, you don't talk about it. I would also say that another difference is how strangers respond to your pregnancy here. This could just be because I'm from the South in the States, and in the South we are all about talking to strangers and helping strangers, and it could also be because where I live in Germany, it's not really that way. I'll just leave it at that. But the way that strangers respond to you and being pregnant is very, very, very different. I remember when I visited the States in October and I had a very teeny tiny baby bump, very teeny tiny. I went out to lunch with some friends, and there were no spaces at the restaurant. There was no place for us to sit. And I remember a couple of different people stood up and said, "No, you can take our table, you can sit here, and you can have our seats." And that would not happen here. Many times I've been on the train, or I've been on the S-Bahn, or I've been on public transportation, and people would just sit. They don't pay attention, or they don't think anything of it. That's at least been the case for me. I will say though that when we visited Hamburg, it was a very different situation where almost everybody would offer me their seat, and people were very, very, very gracious and very helpful, picking things up for me if they saw that I had dropped anything. And it was really funny because there were a couple of times when people didn't actually notice that I was pregnant until they were about to get off the bus, and they came and apologized to me for not getting up and not offering me their seat. So I don't want to say that's necessarily a German thing, because I have had really nice, wonderful people that have been super helpful and accommodating during my pregnancy, but in general, at least where I live, no. People don't really care. Another thing that was a bit of a shock for me culturally is this whole concept of a baby name list. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, this is what it is. We have something called the International Manual of First Names. And basically what this name list is, it's just a list of boys' and girls' names that have been pre-approved. If you want to name your baby something on this list, then go for it. There's nothing that you have to do, nothing you have to say, no extra step that you need to make. You can name your baby that name just like you want to and intend to. However, and this is where it was a bit of an issue for us because I am an expat, if you want to name something that is not on this baby list, then you have to get approval from the government. You have to contact your local Standesamt, and you have to basically ask for permission to name your child this name. There are a couple of rules that the Standesamt has to look at, and they have to determine whether or not the name is acceptable. And here are some of the things. I wrote them down. So the name that you choose for your baby, it must indicate a gender. So there are no Aarons or Camerons or Jamies, things that are gender neutral that could work for a boy or a girl. No, in Germany it is required that your name either shows that you have a boy or a girl. There's also this trend in the States of using last names as first names, and that's not the case here in Germany. So you're not going to have a Jackson or a Harris or a Harrison or anything that's a last name that's not allowed as a first name. There's also a law that you cannot have evil names as a baby's name. So there will be no Hitlers, things like that. That's not allowed. And then one of the most interesting rules that I think gives the government a lot of flexibility is that the parents are not allowed to name their child anything that might endanger the well-being of the child. So it gives the government a lot of room to interpret whether the name is acceptable or not. So in our case, we named our son Callum. Callum is actually a Scottish name. It's very well known in Scotland, but it's not on the international name list. So I had to email the Standesamt, and I had to basically request that my son could be allowed this name. And I gave the name. It was very simple. It was a very simple process, but the fact that I had to ask for permission to name my son something was, for me, just a little odd. And that doesn't mean that if you really want to name your son Jackson or something, it doesn't mean that it can't happen. But you have to kind of prove that Jackson is indeed a first name now in the States, and then they'll usually accept it. So it's I have multiple feelings on this, because I know that the feeling of a lot of Germans and the German government is that they just want to protect the child from having a name that will really just be hard for the rest of their lives. But at the same time, because you have this interpretation of the law, and because you have to ask your local Standesamt, and there's not really like a federal mandate, because how can you? Because names are they're so different. What one Standesamt says is okay, another Standesamt 5 miles away might say, no, that's not an appropriate name for a child. So it's really, really, really hard. Luckily, we didn't have any issues with Callum. Linnea, which is the chosen name that we've chosen for our little girl, it's also not on this international list. So we'll have to contact the Standesamt with this name as well. To be honest, I have mixed feelings about this whole thing, because a part of me feels like, yeah, I mean, I get the point. I can see why it would be really beneficial to have somebody say, no, don't name your child that. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible mistake. But then at the same time, the American side of me kind of feels like, well, no, who are you to tell me what I can or can't name my baby? So I don't know. I see both sides. It's hard for me to really say. I mean, luckily with me, it was very, very, very easy, because even though our name was not on the list, it was still a name that I could prove existed, and one that was not offensive in any way. So it worked out well for us, but I can understand why it would really ruffle some feathers of others. I would say probably the last little bit of information about being pregnant in Germany is that it is a huge eye-opening experience when it comes to learning a language, because there are so many things that you have to do, and there are so many situations where you have to use the language. It's just like, sometimes it could be a little overwhelming. And I remember specifically preparing specific vocabulary before my doctor's appointments, because even though I had lived in Germany a few years, I didn't know some of the vocabulary for certain things. With my first pregnancy, I was very uncomfortable with using some of the words and some of the grammar and things, but now, having been pregnant and now going through it a second time, I feel so much different about the whole experience, and I feel so much more secure. Some of the words are so funny. It's a reminder to me of how literal the German language is. You take one noun, you take another noun, you put it together, and of course it means something, and it's such a literal translation. The best examples off the top of my head are the word for nipple in English. It's Brustwarz in German, and it literally translates to breast wart. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of strange, but I get it. It makes sense. Your placenta, many doctors say placenta, but the actual German word for it is Mutterkuchen, which literally translates to mother cake. So some of these words, like I said, you have to learn them, and the more you use them, the more you get used to them. But yeah, I would definitely say that being pregnant in Germany did a lot for my vocabulary here. All in all, I would say that the experience of being pregnant here has been overall a good one. At least medically, I feel like I have been very well taken care of. I feel like legally it's been great to have different options for different things. But even though I've done this before, I've walked this path before, I've been pregnant before, I'll still say that being away from my culture is still just as hard as it was the very first day I found out I was pregnant with my first child. It's so hard to be away, especially when you have cultural expectations, and you just don't really have the opportunity to do those sorts of things or to express yourself in those ways. You just don't have people around you that understand and feel the same way you do about certain things culturally. So it is hard, and I will say that being pregnant as an expat, while a great experience in many ways, and I'm forever thankful that my children are born in Germany and will always have this rich culture. It's such an amazing place to be born. And I feel so blessed that they get to share their birthplace with their father, who, of course, my husband is German. But at the same time, it is hard that I'll never know what a baby shower is like. I'll never know what it feels like to have loads of family waiting at the hospital while I give birth. I'll never know. I'll never ever ever have that experience as long as I'm an expat. So there are many good things, but there are also some lonely things, and the loneliness sometimes gets really intense. So it's hard. You have a lot of homesickness, even though it's hard being away from home, and even though it's hard to be alone or to be an expat, giving birth in a country that's not your own. I also feel incredibly blessed that I have a husband that's a different culture, who speaks a different native language, who's teaching our son his native language. I feel like in many ways I've seen parts of the world that people would only dream of. I've had experiences that people could only imagine having, and you just have to kind of take the good and the bad, and that's kind of how you get through. So I hope that you all have enjoyed this video. If you have any other questions about pregnancy or being pregnant here in Germany, leave me a comment, leave me a question, and I'll do my very best to try to answer that. I will work on part 2, which is giving birth and having a baby here in Germany. And if you guys haven't already checked us out, we make vlogs every single day, just filming our daily lives here in Germany as an international family. So I hope that you all enjoyed this video. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. Bye!